Long ago, we began as stardust, born of a great rupture far across the skies.
All that there is came from the one great. Then came fractures, and births, and souls. But the greater will made a mistake. And so, what was borrowed must be returned. Melt it all away with the yellow chaos flame, until all is one again.
The One Great refers to a concept similar to the Big Bang, which theorizes how the universe expanded from its initial state. At the beginning of the universe, all matter was fused into a high-density mass. Then, this primordial state was altered by the greater will to create the lands between, as we know them, ordering chaos into a livable environment. But the greater will wasn't the only mystical force coveting this new dominion. Over time, entities known as outer gods began to meddle with the greater will's plans. One of these outer gods embodies the yellow flame of frenzy, a dreadful source of power tied to despair and madness.
I fear that you have borne witness to the whole of it. The conceits, the hypocrisy of the world built upon the Erd Tree. They were each of them defective, unhinged from the start. Marika herself, and the fingers that guided her. Ever young Mikola saw things for what they were. He knew that his bloodline was tainted, his roots mired in madness. A tragedy if ever there was one.
In order to spread its doctrine, the greater will relied on creatures known as fingers. As the fingers were incapable of speech, their motions had to be interpreted by an order of elderly sages called finger readers. However, one of the fingers was different from the rest of its kind. Their message contradicted the greater will's directive, and so they were left without a finger reader to translate it, perhaps in hopes of silencing them. Despite their isolation, the Readerless Fingers eventually managed to convey their message through imprints seared upon stone tablets. The exact meaning of the imprint is up to interpretation, though it likely represents the three fingers being separated from their orderly counterpart. Together, they might have formed a single five-fingered hand before the greater will divided the One Great. This suggests chaos and order are two sides of the same coin, inextricably linked to one another. As such, the fingers' attempt to establish order were doomed from the start. After giving birth to the three fingers, Midra was abandoned by the greater will, perhaps when it realized the futility of the fingers' task. As knowledge of the Readerless Fingers began to spread, one individual would soon become known as its first worshipper. His name was Shabriri. Shabriri was imprisoned and punished for the crime of slander. His eyes were gouged out, a harsh punishment intended to serve as an example of what happens to those who spread beliefs deemed heretical to Erd Tree worship. Yet again, this preventive measure backfired when the flame of frenzy began to fester within Shabriri's eye sockets. He became a disembodied soul, able to possess the bodies of others over the ages. But in order to achieve its goals, the outer god of chaos needed more than a mere herald. Midra was a great sage who ruled over an isolated forest located in Hornsent territory. One day, he welcomed a woman named Nanaya into his home. Unbeknownst to him, though, her body was possessed by Shabriri. Shabriri's influence over Midra grew over time, leading him to study the fingers and experiment on them. The flame of Frenzy's nefarious influence was eventually noticed by the Horn Scent. Inquisitors were dispatched to contain the threat. They confronted Midra and pierced his body with the great sword of damnation. But this was only a temporary setback for the Frenzied Flame. Shabriri knew Midra's despair would only grow over time. Thus, he urged Midra to endure as long as he could, aware that his eventual demise would bring about the coming of a Lord of Frenzied Flame. The Horn Scent quarantined the Abyssal Woods, believing they had successfully contained the threat. In reality, though, it was only a matter of time before Midra gave in, making the threat infinitely worse.
I am Kale, purveyor of fine goods. I am of a nomadic people, selling wares as I travel. My people, wanderers all, have long been spurned by the grace of gold. By the way, have you heard of the Great Caravan? Well, even we had a place to call home once. The Great Caravan, they called it.
During the age of the Erd Tree, a tribe of merchants prospered. They were known as the Great Caravan, and presumably traded with various factions and kingdoms. One day, they acquired a stone tablet bearing the Three Fingers imprint. From it, they gleaned forbidden knowledge of the fingers' origins. As a result, they were accused of heresy. Members of the Great Caravan were rounded up and buried alive below Lendel, locked behind a golden seal.
Did you see what they did to my ancestors? The whole clan buried alive, sick, maddened, husks of themselves. They think we worship the Three Fingers, that we called the maddening sickness down upon them. Well, if that's what they expect from us, then that's what they shall get from us! The world of grace and its people should have been content to see us sink between the cracks, but to have intruded upon our solace, having broken us upon their whims, I'll never forgive any of you.
Driven mad by despair, the merchants chanted a curse that summoned the Three Fingers, granting them a foothold below the Erd Tree. Sometime later, Tarnished returned to the lands between. They began their quest to claim the Elden Ring, as foretold by Queen Marika upon their exile. One of these Tarnished champions was known as Vyke the Dragon Spear, a renowned member of Lendel's ancient dragon cult. During his journey, Vyke gained 2 great runes, possibly from unknown demigods. This granted him access to Lendel and the northern regions. However, Vyke knew his Finger Maiden's sacrifice was a necessary step in his quest to enter the Erd Tree. Somewhere along the path, he met Shabriri, who offered him an alternate solution.
You were about to sacrifice something precious. The life of a fair maiden that you would toss into the fiery forge, only so that you may be Lord. What a horrible thing to ponder. Chosen Tarnished and would-be Lord, dare to tread the path of true rigor. Spare the poor girl and singe your own flesh in her stead. If you are prepared to show resolve, descend into the depths far below the Erd Tree capital. Seek audience with the Three Fingers and the flame of frenzy. If you inherit the flame of frenzy, your flesh will serve as kindling, setting you on the righteous path of lordship, the path of the Lord of Chaos.
Persuaded by Shabriri's words, Vyke agreed to meet the Three Fingers. After being singed by the Frenzied Flame, he resumed his journey to the Forge of the Giants. However, Vyke never made it to the Forge. He ended up imprisoned in an Everjail and never became a Lord of Frenzied Flame. Some time later, another Tarnished would return to the Lands Between, one who would either contain the Frenzied Flame or unleash it upon the world. Thank you for watching.